Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, it looks like we have a good amount of people here, so I'm just gonna go get started. So welcome everyone. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're ready to check out our compost site here at UTA. I'm Bhargavi. I'm from the Office of Sustainability. And here at UTA, we're very lucky to have our own campus composter, John Darling, take on the amazing feat of composting tens of thousands of food scraps we get from dining services. And we then get to use this compost for campus landscaping and even a little bit for our community garden here. To get started, I'm just going to give a brief introduction and overview into composting. So first off, compost is organic material that can be added to soil to help plants grow healthier and just be a lot more nutritious. So you can make compost from organic waste. You can make compost from organic waste such as food scraps, yard waste, and these organic materials make up about 50% of what we throw away in the trash, which is almost a third. So when we compost whatever we can, this can make a huge difference when it comes to diverting our waste from landfills. And these wastes typically produce a lot of methane, one of the most potent greenhouse gases inside of landfills, and contributes to climate change greatly. So when we compost, we're not only mitigating these issues, but we're also left with nutrient-rich soil that we can use to grow more plants. So there's actually a couple different types of composting processes. There's vermiculture, there's industrial composting, and there's backyard composting, and then different ways that are kind of in the middle as well. And on the composting site today, we're actually going to see kind of a larger scale version of backyard composting. And so out of these many different types of composting, vermiculture is also known as worm composting, and this is when you take a bin and put some worms in it. You could put organic waste in it, and you also have to put like a specific amount of browns, so like dried up leaves or newspapers. And this is actually a pretty accessible way to compost, because you could you could do this without a backyard, and you could do this in a small space. So that's why a lot of people who live in apartments like to do this kind of composting. The con is that sometimes the worms don't eat as much waste as we produce. Industrial composting is kind of a larger scale version of this. An example of this would be a curbside composting program. So this is when cities have offer a curbside composting program, right? Just like recycling and trash, typically get a green bin, and this means that it's just a lot easier for people to participate in it because it's lower effort. But the downside is this is not super common in America, and there's not too many cities that do it yet. And then the third type, backyard composting, is kind of what we're going to see today, but on a larger scale. So this is when you pile up in layers different types of organic waste, like yard clippings, dried up leaves, stuff like that, and you pile it just the right way with some organic or with food waste. So we're gonna see a really large scale version of this here. And I mean, here at UTA, we have an award-winning compost program that's existed since 2005. And in a typical year, the program composts around over 40 tons of food waste from campus. So now I'm gonna turn it over to John Darling himself, the expert in all of this, to give us a tour of his beloved composting ground so we could learn from the expert himself.
To have people look at the compost site, it's probably fair to say I'm pretty much obsessed with the whole concept of compost, the combination of producing less waste and making a useful product out of it is just incredibly attractive to me, and I can't seem to get over it. I was, in fact, not much of an expert, and I'm still have a long way to go, but I was the product of the first City of Arlington Master Composter class, and as a result of that, eventually I fell into this job as a volunteer, and then a couple of wonderful women, one from UTA, one from the city, got together and wrote a grant, something called a solid waste disposal grant, and which is exactly what we do, only we don't dispose of it in the landfill, we make something good. And since then, since the grant ended, UTA hired me, and here we are, many tons later of not sending leaves and kitchen waste to the landfill. I'll start with a very simple, ordinary thing, and I've reduced it so you don't have to see all the repetitious steps. Every day, every afternoon, I go around the campus, I pick up kitchen scraps and coffee grounds. And here is the kind of bucket I leave at a Starbucks. It's got coffee grounds in it, and I have this very low-tech scale. And as a result of starting with the grant where people wanted proof that we were doing something, I'm still weighing things. That's how I can tell you that we have averaged, pre-pandemic, we averaged 46 tons a year of kitchen waste and coffee grounds just from this campus. That I think is amazing. Once I realized it, I thought, no wonder I feel tired. That's a lot. Anyway, here we have 14 minus 3 for the bucket. I can do math in my head on a good day. And what is that? That's 11, yes? That's 11. So here we are over at the office. It's the same thing exactly. Yes, that's the office. Don't miss anything. This is a standing desk. I understand they're all the rage. Same thing for the kitchen scraps. Only here, the office that Bhargavi is in buys me compostable bags that are made not of petroleum, but of corn oil and other things. And these bags actually get thrown into a compost pile and are made into the final product. Don't recommend that you try this at home because home compost piles generally just don't work well with these bags. But anyway, every day I have to weigh that too. There's 20 pounds. I'm going to write it down because I will forget it. So today that's 76 pounds total from the UC kitchen. Pre-pandemic, it would have been 2 to 3 times that much every day. But still, the people there are still helping every day, and still, this material is not going to landfill. What happens next is I load the stuff into a wheelbarrow, and we'll go over here, and I'll show you. Here's some I left from yesterday, so you could see it today. You don't have to watch me unload bags. Well, somebody said, don't show all the boring stuff. Anyway, this is some from yesterday. This is the pile I'm working on right now. It is a layer cake. I'm on my 3rd layer. This is what I put in this morning. It's mixed coffee grounds and kitchen waste. And I'm just going to, for now, I'm not going to show you the whole wheelbarrow being emptied. I'll finish this. You see, by the way, these blobs here are the bio bags that are going to be part of the product. I'll finish covering this and show you what I do then. There are formulas for this, and if I were working at a big commercial site, we would be applying formulas. The general formula for a backyard composter is equal parts by weight of things that are high in nitrogen, like kitchen waste, and things that are high in carbon, like old leaves. We want this mix, and we want it equal parts by weight. So these are light and fluffy. You need a lot of these to balance to get equal parts of this, because this is not light and fluffy. So it's something you get a feel for. I don't think I know backyard composters don't sit around and measure this stuff. You just do it, and it works out fine. The last step is to cover it up. Oh, wait. I let this sit all morning, so it's gotten dry. I don't want to drown it, because one thing we want to do is end up with air space. This compost pile, I developed the notion of compost piles when I would give tours to kids, fourth graders in particular. This compost pile, I claim, is just like us. It wants what we want. It wants air, water, proteins, and carbohydrates. Proteins are the high nitrogen kitchen waste. Carbohydrates come from leaves. You need the proteins for growth, and you need the carbs for energy. This pile has got countless, well, probably almost countless, billions of organisms in it, fungi and bacteria, pardon me, that need just what we need: air, water, carbohydrates, protein. Now I'm going to give them some carbohydrates. They will also help seal in the moisture. I won't do it all. You get the idea. There's not much to it. In fact, I hate, in a way, for people to know, because I've had bosses who think that what I do is complicated and mysterious. I have had bosses like that. They don't tell me, just go do it, and now here I am. This is it. People have been doing this for a long time. Our method comes to us in a simplified form from one that was developed in Indore, India, at an agricultural station during the Raj. Mine is much simpler than theirs, much simpler. That guy had formulas. Anyway, we'll keep piling this up. I like to get about 6 inches of leaves for every inch or inch and a half of kitchen waste. And then when it gets to be about 3 feet high, I'll stop. The next thing after that is, at some point, it will become inactive. That is, it'll start to dry out. All the local food bits are gone. I need to mix it and move it so I can have another one. This one is small because I moved it last week. I moved the one that was here last week over here. Let's go over here and look at this one. This one looked exactly like that, except it was about 3 feet high. And I moved it and mixed it, and I added a little water here and there, because one thing is, any one of the 4 essentials can stop the process. We have to have all 4. So you could have plenty of everything except water, the process stops. You have plenty of everything except nitrogen, and it stops. So there is a certain amount of looking, monitoring, fiddling, a little bit of fiddling, to keep it going as fast as possible. And that's the point of compost. You go as fast as possible in the smallest possible space, and trying to take advantage of things that happen in nature. Everything we do here happens on the forest floor, and some people claim that compost is what happens on the forest floor. I've never bought that, because we want to control things that are not controlled in the forest floor. I don't have my thermometer here. Oops. You probably don't want me. You don't want to follow me over there and get my thermometer? You do? I'm just not ready for the big time. Right. Just go over to my executive office, get my thermometer. Many composters are obsessed with temperatures because the hotter the pile, the faster you're making compost. And why is that? Because all the microorganisms are doing just what all of us are doing right now. We're giving off heat. We just are. I mean, unless you're a lizard or a snake or something, you're giving off heat right now. And that's what the creatures in the pile are doing. So the hotter the pile, the more creatures we have and the more they're eating and reproducing and just generally carrying on and giving off heat. And the way to find out, take its temperature. Before I do that, I'll stop over here. This is one kind of backyard compost pile. A fellow showed up out of the blue the other day and wanted to learn to make compost. So I set him up with everything he needed, including this bin, and he made a great pile. Is that 140 something degrees still? We're going on our third week. This is a very nice pile. He turned it once. He didn't need any water because we had a lot of rain, but he managed to redistribute all that wet, rainy stuff. This is a great pile for a backyard pile. He was at 150, which is very hot. He's moving right along. This is going to be good compost, and it's going to be pretty quick. And by pretty quick, people want to know maybe 6 weeks. If you stay right after it and keep fiddling with it, maybe 6 weeks. Better to have 2 months. Now, we'll have a look at the pile temperature over here. Now, this is an old pile. Turned it once. This thermometer is right now at 56 degrees, or here we are, 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Can you see that? Now, it won't get as hot as it did the first time, because every time you turn it and fiddle with it, there's less and less good stuff remaining. So it gets harder and harder for the microorganisms to make an exciting living, and the whole process slows down. Where am I? I did this a while ago, and I tried to find the right place, and we were 124. But it's not bad for an old beat-up pile. And the fact is, it's happening. Does it look like compost? No, it looks terrible. That's why we're taking the temperature. Where are we taking the temperature? Oops. Here, right there. That's where we're taking the temperature. You can feel that. It's quite warm. We don't care about this. This is just inevitable. We've got to have an outside. There's no way out of it. It's physical. So that's another returning it. We want to get all this dry, beat up outside stuff inside, so it can participate too. Let's go over here and look at an older pile. So that's the new one. This is one turning, which is another way of saying mixing. Right? This one I mixed twice, and they get smaller. Somehow, as big pieces break down, the piles get smaller. This one started out almost the size of that one, and it used to look just like that first one. So here we are. I won't even bother with the temperature. It's going to be low. One on the left is younger. This one is older. You can see lots of crummy looking stuff in here because the groundskeepers bring me everything, including lots of trash, I'm sorry to say. But on the other hand, you can also see all these fine things. There's a lot of nice stuff in here. The fine particles are the things that in one way or another make the soil happy. And the basic organic gardening tenet is don't treat the plants, treat the soil. And the soil will take care of the plants. That's our plan here. Make the soil happy, and that'll make the plants happy. here's another pile. This is the oldest one. I started screening this one. That is to say, I have a. Can you see that tractor-like thing over there, the Bobcat, which is a skid steer front end loader. Okay, it just happened. The brand is Bobcat. That's the only way I can get this stuff done, and that's one of the big things we got with the grant. Bring that over here when the ground is dry. Get a scoop and dribble it onto the screen over there in that orange machine, the easy screen, whose only job is to shake. And as it shakes, fine things fall through, crummy stuff stays on this side. I scoop up the crummy stuff, which is largely things that can still be composted further, put it on the next pile. That's what I did right here. This pile, this looks a little different over here from over there. I scooped up things that wouldn't go through the screen and put them over here. Now, when I turn and mix and water this pile, that's going to get better. It's going to break down. This will not break down. This is the bane of the composter's existence, plastic trash. We hear more and more and more about the terrible problems with plastic as it breaks down. Somebody was just telling me how much plastic we eat during a lifetime, and it was appalling. I mean, I'm not eating bottled caps, but I'm eating plastic one way or another. So there's the process. Starting over there, the youngest, the next oldest, the oldest. This is the one that we'll go over here to the screen. I started screening. It falls through here. Bad stuff on this side, good stuff on that side. Trash in here when I think of it, driving me crazy. There, the composter's life. But here we are. I cleaned this up. Just so you can see a little bit of it. It's mostly empty. The screen is not perfect. If I had my way and several $100s, Bhargavi, quite a few $100s, we'd have a better screen. But here's what we're getting. Whoop. This is stuff other composters have said they like the looks of this. They would use it in their gardens. You can use it as mulch. You can mix it in. You can do, those are the two basic things you do with it. And either way, you're going to make your soil happy. I'll show you where we store it. It's going to look the same as this, because after this, the last thing is bring the Bobcat, scoop it up, carry it over there to my storage area. My groundskeeper colleagues who brought me all the dry leaves in the first place are the ones who also come in at the end of the process and take this finished product out to the campus where they use it in different ways. Actually, they use it in both ways. They get rototillers, they till it in to make terrible soil into something that's pretty good, and and they use it as mulch. Put it as mulch, water stays on better, so you don't need as much water. And it breaks down. As it breaks down, it makes the plants better. Here we are. It's the same stuff. There are lots of different. You see lots of different variations. My favorite is the finest. But even the parts that are big and clunky, as long as they're organic, will sooner or later break down. One way this stuff works, even as mulch, is earthworms come up to the surface, they run into a layer of this stuff, they eat their way through it, they dive back down into the earth, and not to put too fine a point on it, poop it out and enrich the soil as they go down. Good stuff. satisfaction here is on many days, and I've thought this over and over. I don't get tired of thinking this, that I'm not saving the world here, but I get satisfaction every time I stop and think about it, because one, I'm not contributing. What I'm doing here helps prolong the life of our landfill. We have a landfill in Arlington. It has, by law, it has a certain lifespan to it. The faster we fill it, the sooner we have to abandon it and build a new one. In this area, we won't build another one in Arlington. It'll be many miles out in the country. So every polluting aspect of a landfill will increase like crazy. We'll have to possibly, I've heard plans for putting in a railroad siding so that we can load compressed garbage into rail cars and take it by train out into the country to a super landfill. We are not going to like paying for that, and it's going to pollute more than it needs to. We could get something like 30% more life out of this landfill if we kept this stuff out. Here's my thought. This is not trash. It's treasure. Thanks a lot.
Hey again, everyone. So thank you to John Darling for giving us that great tour. Now we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A session, so you could ask whatever questions you have for John Darling. Go ahead and put those questions into the chat, and I'll give you a couple minutes to think of them and for us to get situated again. Okay, we have a question. Just a second. Okay, we have a question.
There's somebody out there?
He's heading over.
There's somebody there?
Oh, okay. So the question is, can you go over how I can do this outside or in my in the balcony of my apartment? So I would say with an apartment, it would be best to do kind of like a worm bin. And I actually do have some. I think I do have some resources, and I'll put them in the chat in a bit. John, would you?
Simple, cheap worm bin.
Okay.
I dragged it out when I heard you say it. There are many ways to have a worm bin, and a lot of them cost money. There are many people on the internet who will sell you an expensive worm bin. This one, if you can get free buckets, or even just Home Depot buckets, the plan is drill holes in the lid. Hope this won't drip everywhere. Drill holes in the bottom of the top bucket, and the bottom bucket is just to catch any funny fluids that come out. That's the only purpose. You can then, worms have some things they don't want to eat, but they will eat newspaper. I've gone out of town for 6 weeks and loaded it with as much stuff as I could, and then mostly newspaper. I've come back after 6 weeks, and they're okay. They're bored, but they're all right. And eventually, this is a slow, small-scale process, but the payoff is people agree. I'm gonna get my hands a little icky here. People agree that where am I pointing this?
Right here.
I don't know about technology here. You know that. This stuff, which is called worm compost, and to be blunt, it is worm poop. That's all it is. There's something about going through the digestive system of a worm that enriches this material like crazy. You can dilute it. I made some wonderful potting soil once with beat up compost and this, and the plants went nuts. People dig it into their gardens. You don't have to use it straight, but you can. People with all indoor stuff put it on their house plants, or when they're setting up new plants, they mix it in. So it's a very small scale, but you use it, you feed it kitchen scraps, some coffee grounds. My worms love the squishy stuff from inside cantaloupes. They don't like onions, I'm told. Although I've accidentally given mine onions, and they're okay. They have terrible breath, but they're all right.
Okay, let's go on to the next. Going on to the next question. What's the longest time compost can take to process?
Oh, well, I'm good at that. You come to the right place, because if we get a huge rain, I can't use my bobcat, and I've had compost in progress for 6 months. And I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. It's just that I'm supposed to be getting it in and getting it out. The people in the university center and all the Starbucks on campus giving me stuff every day. It's like nobody is old enough to know this, like Lucille Ball working at the chocolate factory on an assembly line, and they mess up and it keeps coming. It just keeps coming every day, and it piles up all around them. That's what happens here in a way. If I skip a day, if I fool around trying to pretend that I know how to talk to people on the internet, there's going to be more coming in tomorrow. Got to keep going. So if I don't move it out fast enough, there's not enough room. That's it. We need more room. Bhargavi, we need more room.
We got an I Love That episode of I Love Lucy.
Oh, did we really? All right. I thought it was an elderly reference.
Okay, let's see. Okay, the next question. Okay, can any of the composted material become toxic to the soil or plants if they decompose longer than expected?
I have never heard of such a thing. I have heard this, and I've had people at nurseries tell me that they don't like compost because if it has sticks and bits of leaves in it, this is what they say. Those high carbon materials will rob nitrogen from the plants, so the plants will suffer if you have incomplete compost. That's as close to toxic as I have ever heard. And in my experience, which is limited and anecdotal, I have never encountered this problem of robbing. And right here, let me see if I can hold this up. I'm going to go around behind you and get this tray. I'm going to waddle back over here. This is not the good tray. I have taken the good tray to the university center. Let's see how this works. Yes. I can see me. Is that me?
Yeah, that's you.
Me. Oh, technology. I'm going to try here. This is a test. This is a very informal, statistically invalid test. This is cilantro. And yeah, I think we kind of got it.
Yeah.
All right. This is UTA compost on the left. This is commercial potting soil for seedlings on the right. They're kind of the same. Kind of. Here, you be an impartial judge.
One.
You don't have to pretend you don't know which is which. Which one do you like better? In terms of strong, healthy growth, height, number of germinated seeds.
These, probably.
These?
Yeah.
You chose the UTA compost over the commercial stuff I had to pay for? Don't tell my wife I went to Ace Hardware and bought this stuff. She's going to kill me. Fortunately, she'll never see this, so I think I'm safe. And I bought the seeds too, and you wouldn't believe what you have to spend on a packet of seeds, but that's a whole different story. So this is a little test. No, do not apply statistics, you'll be disappointed. I think the UTA compost, it's a test. Am I somehow making toxic compost? I don't know how I would, given my ingredients, but am I? And the answer seems to be, no, you're not, you big dummy. Or something to that effect.
Okay.
Are you paying attention to this?
Okay, someone asked, can you use any other organisms besides a worm?
Yes, I know the answer to this one. Because I knew a woman at a dog park who did research on this. And it turns out there's a thing called, don't try this in your apartment. Do not. But you've got a backyard, you can do it. I tried it here. And it works like crazy. Something called black soldier flies, and you're interested in their larvae. That is the little caterpillar-like, well, maggots, not to be too fussy about it. They're fly maggots. They don't bite. They They don't bother you. They're just, and you see them all over the place. You can set up a certain kind of bin. You can Google it, or you can pay an extravagant amount of money for one. The usual. That is, you can make one yourself, or you can pay a fortune, or anywhere in between. And these black soldier fly larvae have this advantage. Well, several advantages. Fishermen like them. If you raise a lot of them, you can take them fishing. That is to say, you can use them as bait. And chickens love them. So if you raise a lot of them, some people get them not to make compost, but just to make their chickens happy, backyard chickens. And they will compost meat, cheese, any kind of dairy, the things we don't want to put in our compost pile. I mean, meat, they'll eat it. Well, they're fly larvae, you know. You know what fly larvae are like. They're not very selective. Anyway, so that's the only other organism I've heard about. And do not try it in your apartment. Do not.
I actually, if anyone's on TikTok, there's a TikTok account that called Grubterra that is basically just like watching these larvae eat stuff. So
Oh, really?
it's a really cool account if you want to see it.
You know about this?
Okay. So what are the challenges? Yeah. What are the challenges that we can face with composting?
One,
Or that we face with
the
composting?
body is falling apart. After the age of 70, you can pretty much kiss it off. No, you wanted to know, oh, the challenges. Okay, once a year I'm involved, in normal times, I'm involved with something the city puts on in cooperation with UTA. It's not just this site that got started with cooperation, it's an annual backyard class. And what I've learned helping to teach that class is, the most common thing is, the challenge is, my compost is just sitting there. I did everything you said, it's just sitting there. And the answer, every time we can pursue it and figure it out, the answer is, and this may sound too simple, it's too dry. Mix it, turn it, water it, especially in spring, summer, and most of fall. So that's the challenge. The other challenge is you've got a whole bunch of kitchen waste and you just don't have very many leaves. And especially if you've got one of those tumblers or some kind of closed container, you make soup and it's nasty because you don't have enough air and you don't have enough dry things. When I say on my piles, about 1 inch, maybe 2 inches at the most, of kitchen waste and coffee grounds, and about 6 inches of dry stuff, dry leaves. I'm not kidding. And it's not that I'm brilliant about this, it's just, it works. It just, year after year, it just keeps working. And year after year, beginning composters say, I tried it, but it just didn't work. And so we start to talk about it. And maybe 80% of the time, it's too dry.
Okay, and then we have our coffee grinds, good for compost.
You know, I always thought they were perfect. And yet, recently, I read too many funny things on the internet. Recently, I read somebody saying, okay, 2 things I had not heard. One, and I get every kind of coffee grounds you can get from every kind of Starbucks. Coffee that has been ground but not brewed, when it hits water, is very acidic. Once it has been brewed and drained, it's not acidic anymore. The acidity is in the coffee. So you don't have to worry. Although for years I've told people, you've got azaleas or things that love acid, throw your coffee grounds on. Turns out, once it's been brewed, they're not that acidic. And if they haven't been brewed, they're too acidic. So be careful. Another site, it was on Tree Hugger, a big article on a site I look at called Tree Hugger, recommended, they were talking about downsides of coffee grounds, and they said, shoot for 20%. I think they meant 20% by weight, but I just hate it when they don't specify. Is it volume? Is it weight? Come on. Anyway, they said shoot for 20%, and they had their reasons. When I first learned about coffee grounds and got a lot, I made several piles of oak leaves, which are notoriously difficult to compost. They have way too much tannic acid, and coffee grounds. That's all I did. Oak leaves and coffee grounds. and it operated just like any other pile. I'm sure we were missing some of the interesting micronutrients you get from banana peels and broccoli stems and who knows, well, all of cantaloupe guts. We were missing some interesting nutrients that plants might like. But straight coffee grounds plus oak leaves, you can make compost. I did it.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, can we compost year-round?
Oh yeah, and I left that part out completely. I did. Well, you know, if I were actually teaching the class, I'd be almost organized. It would be close. One basic notion is if the pile is too small in the winter, it will lose heat too fast because the heat is it's generated by the microorganisms. It's not generated by fire or anything. It's the metabolism, just like you're generating heat right now, sitting perfectly still, staring at a screen, you're generating heat. The creatures in the pile are doing the same thing. If the pile is too small, the heat flies off, and certain kinds of microorganisms you want when it gets hotter don't show up. There are different classes, and there's a certain class that works very fast, but only when the pile is pretty hot. So 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet high is considered a minimum to be self-insulating. And that just means it's big enough to hold a core of moisture and good enough materials that you put in so that the heat doesn't fly off. And you get those really good microorganisms, the fast ones, at the high end of the temperature scale. Anyway, winter is fine, summer is fine, it's not too hot. Your compost will be hotter than the hottest summer day as long as you keep it wet.
Great, okay. Let's see. Yes, you can also compost dust and dirt that you get from sweeping your floors too.
Oh yeah, and pet hair is full of nitrogen. The only problem with pet hair is it's encased in funny layers and it's really hard to break down.
Okay, let's see. Do you only get organic waste from UTA? If you do, how can we get more places nearby to give you their organic waste?
This is actually an excellent question, and it's one that has driven me crazy, especially when the pandemic got going and I couldn't go to UTA. So here's the equation, and it turns out the huge commercial sites have the same equation. What's the minimum driving and the maximum return, the maximum pickup, the maximum pounds? And so the minute I leave UTA, here's my normal route in pre-pandemic times. 6 miles pre-pandemic, 2.5 hours. And on an average day, maybe 800 pounds from the campus alone. So 6 miles, 8 hours, 200 pounds. Roughly, that pounds go way up and down. And yeah, I do what I think of as the most horrible thing on earth. I walk into a place cold and say, "Hi, I'm John, I want your trash and I'd like to make compost." I think they call it cold call. And boy, do I hate it. And the best result is a brewery over in East Arlington, and they'll give me a lot. They've got to deal with a rancher because they give their spent grains to cattle. He gives it to his cattle. But they let me scoop up 100 pounds once or twice a week. But there's more driving, more time, which means less time here. It's this equation thing. It almost makes me feel like a business person, which I've never felt like. But that's a very good question. How do you get that? The least driving, the least time spent away from here, because this is my favorite place. Don't tell my wife. Okay, this is my favorite place outside the house, and I don't want to be away convincing people that I'm not crazy, that I really do want their stuff and I'm going to use it to save the earth. So get with it.
Okay, let's see. What is the optimum size of a compost pile? I think you did kind of talk about it.
Well, 3 by 3 is minimum.
Yeah.
Now, Optimum is totally different. The huge places they have these compost turning devices that drive along and straddle a pile, and they make it 3 to 4, sometimes 6 feet high. And it can be 100 yards long. The key for optimum size is the higher you get it, the more weight is going to be on it, and the more squashing there's going to be, and the more oxygen you're going to lose. The air spaces will be lost. That means there's less room for oxygen. So I don't like to go above 3 feet. I've certainly gone much longer and wider in that pile that we were just looking at. That's, I don't know how long it is, but it's a lot longer than 3 feet, as long as I just don't get too.
Okay. Okay, so someone said, I've always heard that compost smells bad. Is this true, or is it just a rumor?
Hold that thought for one moment. You stay right here. I'll go over here. I just happen to have some compost.
I guess I'll find out soon.
Here we are. It's compost. Okay. And if you, now I don't know if you can you smell through your mask, or do you want to
Yeah, I
remove
can
it?
smell through.
Can you? Well, wait. Let me stir it up so we get goopy stuff from down inside. This has been screened twice, so it's really pretty. But here you go. You tell me. Give it to me straight.
It smells like really good soil.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You know, the only time I failed on this was with a 4th grade girl. You just reminded me. This 4th grade girl, I did this. I like to do it when I have kids. I just say, hey, how does it smell? Because it's the big final, the big punchline. And this girl looked at me with angelic little face and said, it smells like a dead deer. That's a quote. That is a quote. And I lost the group at that point. It was on.
Okay, we'll answer one more question. We don't have a lot of time, so let's see. Which one can we answer?
Keep it simple.
Is there a drop-off location where UTA students that live on campus can drop off food scraps?
It's actually a good
that
one.
we've collected.
I didn't realize there were going to be people out here, and people who, look, I'm going to show you something. Just take a second. Now the drop-off thing is I've never been able to solve it properly. This arrived this morning. A woman whose name, I'm sorry to say I've forgotten, came by the gate and plunked it down inside the gate, which is what I said she could do. Anytime you've got some stuff, come by my gate. You don't see me, or if you do see me and you just rather not, you know, be distracted by a crazy old fool, you can just plunk it down by the gate. And I'll take it and I'll add it to my stuff. This is just, I've got a bag just like this at home. A lot of coffee and some stuff. I try to keep the wholesome stuff to a minimum, but you know, other than that, yes.
Okay.
I don't have a good site that's central. We are at 500 Summit, behind Environmental Health and Safety. It looks like a big, ugly mess. But if you feel like it, I've got 4 or 5 people who just want to do this. There's a biology graduate student, and I used to be one of those a million years ago, and he's trying to convince his buddies to do it. No success at all. He's a little disgusted with his pals, but he's doing it. Good question.
But yeah, so this this site is at 500 Summit, but it's actually right behind the environmental health building. So you'll see like a big kind of like infographic sign that talks about the composting program, and then there's a gate, and that's where it is. But yeah, actually real quick, do you have any volunteering opportunities?
I have had over the years. People have come and gone. There was a young woman who was in some kind of early admission program, and I swear she was about 12, but she was like, she got in about a year or two early, and she was here for 2 or 3 years, and then she went to Berkeley or Dartmouth or some inconsequential place.
But yeah, I mean, it's good to hear that people want to volunteer, so that's definitely something we could work on.
It's not as good as it used to be when I had more stuff, when I was more frantic to get things done. Because we're down to about half of what we used to have. And that means, really, the old fool can actually pretty much handle it. But yeah, and especially if you want to come in and learn, like the guy with his backyard bin over there, he wants to volunteer, and I make the opportunities, but mostly what he wanted was to learn, and I'm happy to help with that.
Great. Thank you, John. This has been such a great informational session. Yeah, we're a little over. Sorry about that. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I think it was a super great tour. I really hope people learned about composting here at UTA. So yeah, have a nice day. Thank you.